going to tear down and replace. We're going to fix what we've got building there. And there's going to be that incremental, what Director Herrick was talking about earlier. There's going to be this, all right, we've spent, what was it, $250,000 or more on that first floor. There's going to be a big chunk on the second floor. There's going to be a big chunk with environmental engineering, et cetera, related to the outside. And well, let's face it, even without doing anything with the building, there's stuff that needs to be done outside with pavement, parking lot, et cetera, lighting, the whole 9 yards. So there's that, certainly this incremental aspects of, yeah, that money adds up more than that referendum number, no matter how we slice this. So that's something to consider. My question about, or concern, I guess, about the two plans is, I don't know how that's going to work, practically speaking, on the receiving end with the vendor, with the contractors. They're going to have to put together two bids and that type of thing. Might we, and I understand and agree with the concerns about any further delay, but at the same time, would it be better to go ahead and have this discussion amongst the board and the membership about which plan do we want to go with before we put two plans out there to bid? I don't think that will be well received in the contracting community on bidding on two different plans.
Cheryl?
We've had that discussion, and the plan the board voted on is the one that you put out to get prices on. As I understand it, the reason that the number came in higher was because we were asking to have it done more quickly.
That would be part of the reason, and then part of it also is that reduced the number of bidders, so less competitive process.
But it increased the price. So when we put out the plan that this board has approved, then it's going to be in a more realistic time frame, which should reduce the costs, as well as creating more competition, because it's going to go out and more contractors can bid on it. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
So I don't see the point in looking backwards to an old plan that's not what we've recently approved, but rather we should go forward with the plan that we approved, put the RFP out there, see what the number comes back at.
Tom?
The point is the fact that the association members have to pay twice as much for the project. The fact that you're asking for an expedited completion date doesn't double the cost. So there's something in there without, and you're saying the plan was approved at a board meeting, that's fine, but the first plan was put in the news, all three were put in a newspaper, many newspapers. There were many hearings to the membership to listen to what we were looking to do. I'm not even sure, and I had questions at the last meeting to Mr. Maroney about the changes he made in the plans, and I wasn't even clear on it. And when I speak to the association membership, they don't really know what they're getting for that money. I have not seen it distributed. I have not seen it publicized, the changes. So I feel the association membership is at a loss for actually what's going on, where their money's being spent. It's twice the price. I mean, to me, that's alarming. Yes, there were different plans, and we went ahead with the plans because I'm a proponent of getting that building done. I've been since before I was on the board. That's one of the things I campaigned for. So it's killing me as a golfer that it's sitting empty for so many years. So I'm for doing something. And I felt like, yes, if this is the way to get it done and you want to change the plan slightly, we'll get it done. So I did agree, even though I brought up reservations about spending another $40,000 on new plans when we already purchased plans, and if something could be done with the old plans. And I didn't hear back on that either. But my point is to spend twice as much money on the same project. It's alarming to me, and that's what the change is here. Not just the fact that we agreed to a plan and let's go ahead. If it was a slight increase, I wouldn't have had a problem with it, because I want the project done as well. But the membership has to be alarmed when the price doubles for one phase of that project.
Colette?
Okay, the current plans were really asked for because there were problems with the other plans that this board recognized. And I do not agree with going back to the old plans. I don't disagree with putting the new plans out in a way that the membership can look at them and evaluate whether they support the elements of the current plan, but I don't see a point in going back to old plans to, put out 2 bids or, have the membership vote on which set of plans they like. I completely disagree with that, and I'd like to see us go ahead with, putting out an RFP that, supports the plans that we have.
Tom, you want to respond, or?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I do. I just want, could you explain to the membership what was wrong with the original plans? Because I missed that meeting. And I'm wondering what was so wrong that they had to be changed? Because I don't think the membership was informed. So I'd like you to tell the membership what's wrong with the first set of plans.
My recollection, and Mr. Bailey maybe could correct me on this, there were aesthetic concerns, optimal use of the space aesthetically as well as functionally. There was not the handicap accessibility with the elevator. Those are 2 elements. I think there were some other elements that Mr. Bailey had identified that needed to be upgraded for both aesthetic and practicality purposes. Maybe you could jump in here on that.
Well, one that was set up, I guess one of the main rooms was dedicated as a board meeting room, and separate from having it as a board set up all the way, all the time, setting it up that way. It was better to utilize it as a multi-function room, not just as a board room. There were also 2 offices located over there from the admin building. Those are not over there anymore. There was a ramp that went all the way around the building. That's not necessary. So we raised the roof in the new plans, which was that's added substantial cost to it, for 2 reasons. One, better aesthetics, but more importantly, inside it gives it a whole different look and feel, and it squares up the room. And that whole main space is a larger space for big groups to utilize, clubs, organizations, etc. And we also created 2 smaller, one big conference room and a smaller conference room that can be joined into one larger conference room. So you have 3 different areas plus the bar area, and just a different multifunctional space.
And if I could just finish, the recommendations that Mr. Maroney made also had to do with functionality, having better utilization of the bar space, putting it in a location that was going to improve traffic flow and service to the people using the room. And we, as directors, looked at those plans and had an opportunity to make comment on those before we agreed upon them.
Slovan.
Thanks, Doug. Just for sake of membership that's watching the video and this meeting, and to respond to Director Herrick's earlier remarks about the cost differential, I think what I think we all need to keep in mind is basically the following. The unsolicited offer letter that we got last year from a bidder in the amount of $538,000 was an estimate. It was not a fixed price bid, and I don't think they would have signed that and committed themselves to basically doing the full project scope using that dollar amount, because we did ask that specifically in our board meeting because we were concerned. I think it was Director Jacobs that asked specifically whether they will guarantee that price based on the scope. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that $538,000 was a moving number, not really a fixed price bid. We also need to keep in mind that there was a change in the scope based on the improvements that Director Horn just referred to, and also the general manager. So there has been a change which basically caused an increase in the actual second design that was developed and the improvements that were made. So in essence, if you take into the account the increased scope, which gives us more, if you take into account that $538,000 was really an estimate that would likely have gone up, and the fact that we bidded the current design based on being a very busy season for the contractors, and we got an $800,000, which probably will be lower if we give them more time to respond and then do the actual work in fall when they are less busy. We're really not talking about a double in cost. I think we're talking about substantially less in terms of the cost differential, and we just need to be aware of that. I'm comfortable I'd like to make the friendly amendment, but I'm comfortable with what Director Jacobs, Horn, and Supik expressed in terms of going forward and going with the improved design, which obviously the general manager has given a lot of thought and supports, because it seems like the improvements were substantial, especially adding the design that will accommodate for the elevator, and those are very significant improvements in terms of the ADA requirements.
So I think we've discussed this, fairly thoroughly. I would say, my position is, listening to everyone, we should move forward, but I still think we have the due diligence of really understanding what this cost differentials would be. I do believe that there would be some potential for, given the time frame that we're talking about now, for some reduced costs, although, again, I call it a potential. It's not, not really going to happen. But I don't think it hurts us to continue to move forward to get the information. We're not making a decision yet. And clearly, I'll take it personally that, part of the decision-making process will we have to do the homework to understand, because I'm still curious about the difference between the original set of plans and the new ones, and I just want to sort of evaluate that difference so I can put it in more tangible terms rather than abstract terms. So, personally, I would support this because, we do want to move forward. However, Slobodan, I thought you brought up a pretty good point about maybe the timeline is really aggressive. If we push them, how many of the potential bidders would go, I'm really not interested or whatever. Now, we don't want to do the opposite and have them take 6 months to get us a bid back. So maybe we can suggest a reasonable time frame to do this. Did you have something specific in mind? Microphone.
What I was going to suggest is, and I'll certainly read the friendly amendment, but what I had in mind is that the RFP goes out by June 1, and that the award is to take place no later than July 30th. What is not defined in this friendly amendment, obviously, is when the RFPs are due, which is something that will be worked out by the general manager and his team. I don't know if we really need to do that right now. However, I'm also going to suggest that the RFP must be reviewed and approved by the board prior to its release. Okay, so is everybody okay with those 3 changes?
Everybody understand the friendly amendment? So there's a motion to have a friendly amendment. Is there a second to the friendly amendment? Second. All right. I dare say discussion, but I think we're through the discussion. So all those in favor of... Yeah.
So let me read...
All those in favor of this friendly amendment.
Okay.
Read it.
So, friendly amendment to read on the fly. Motion to direct the general manager to rebid the country club renovations with a projected start date of October 1, 2018, and completion date no later than March 8, 2018, period. 19, period. The RFP, upon board's review and approval, is to go out by June 1 with a target date to award the project no later than July 30th, period, 2018.
All right, all those in favor of the friendly amendment, say aye. Okay, yeah,
Who's gonna
thank you
second?
for the 3 hours in.
I'll second.
I'm human. Okay, there's a second to the friendly amendment. All right, no more discussion. All right, so all those in favor of the friendly amendment as presented, Aye. All right, thank you. Now, back to the original motion. There's a motion still on the floor to accept the motion now. It's been amended. So, unless there's any further discussion on that, I'd call the question that, to accept the original motion as amended by the friendly amendment. All those in favor? Do I have a second? God. I'm sorry, folks. I'm just one of those days, you know. I'm a little bit off my game today. Sorry about that. So there's a second. I don't think we need any further discussion. All those in favor of the motion as presented and amended? All right, thank you. Whew, okay. And I do apologize. I've got some family business, and I'm sorry. I'm just okay. The next item on the agenda is discussion update on the forensic audit. This is a general discussion under. No, we're still. Go ahead. Discussion on
Thanks.
forensic audit.
Thanks, Doug. We told the membership in the past that we will basically keep them up to date on the progress related to the forensic audit, and I just wanted to use the opportunity of today's meeting basically to do so, to let you know that the meeting did take place between the auditing firm and the association that took place a week ago last Friday. It was a very good meeting. From the Ocean Pines side, general manager, director of finance, president of the association, and 2 directors were in the audience. Basically the next step is to put in place what we would call an audit team, and also to develop an audit plan. And this is where we are at the moment, and I think what we've been individually considering is, what is the best way to compose this fraud team. I have put together my own chart, PowerPoint slide to illustrate with my colleagues what I envision, just based on my own experience and my past work. And this is where we are at the moment. I've emailed you my chart yesterday, so you know what I envision in terms of the composition, the external, the internal, and perhaps the independent body that would be part of this virtual audit team. I do have a slide with me that I can pop on the screen for a purpose of discussion and also sharing it with the membership. But I was wondering if anybody has a comment or a question, if you wanted to ask me specifically why I'm putting together what I put together, and if you are at a point where you would like to discuss the idea of one of the things that I suggested is to put in place an independent audit committee, which would be composed of certain, perhaps, members of the community that have a specific experience or background that would be advantageous to this virtual team that will be put in place. So I wanted to kind of just have this open discussion with the colleagues, and so that the membership is aware of what's going on and where we are at the moment.
Yeah, and just sort of in response, the concept is sound. However, I really want to sort of look at Gross Mendelsohn, to kind of guide us with that. While it may be a very good idea, they may have their own methodology, the way they do things. And personally, I think having us kind of take direction from them, is really the way to go. While I have been involved tangentially in forensic audits in the past, I haven't had any active participation, and quite frankly, we're paying for these folks, to give them their expertise. We went out to the industry, we got the expertise. The initial meeting was to have, basically that kickoff. And quite frankly, while we may have everything well intended, I think it's more important to take a step back, let the audit firm come back to us with their recommendations and their needs. I personally don't want to presuppose I know what they're going to need or direct them in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, the more arm's length we are from the process, personally speaking, the more arm's length we are from the process, the better. And so I for one, while, like I say, I think it's sound, I just think that we really, our due diligence is to listen to them and have them make the recommendations on how we should move forward. We should take a listening perspective and not an active participation unless specifically asked by them. We know that Steve will be front and center with all of the correspondence, and he will be the point person for the association with regard to the interactions between the forensic audit team and the OPA staff and all the requests for information. Beyond that, I would just look for guidance from Gross Mendelson on what it is that they would need.
I totally agree. Gross Mendelson and its principals, and the ones that we are engaged and have been told to partner, and the seniors on the engagement have, I think it was 25 years, 30 years experience doing this. I'm pretty sure that was the number. They have all the credentials, CPA, certified fraud examiner, certified forensic, whatever all those titles are. They should guide this process, absolutely. And I think that's where we are today. They're guiding the process. They'll tell us what to do, what not to do. I don't think we've got any expert in the community, on the board, anywhere that has the experience that the Gross Mendelson team brings to us. So I think we go with their lead, knowing Steve as our chief financial person is their main point of contact, and then we'll see. And we even started this process, as I recall, the board's desire was, we'll start with the process here. We're not even sure where the audit is going to go as it progresses. We don't know. Is it going to stop at food and beverage? Is it going to go on to X, Y, and Z? And we're looking to, again, my understanding is the auditors are going to lead us on that. This is what they do. This is all these gentlemen do that we're using. So we have the experts. I say we just go with them for right now, with Steve as the point on the process. I don't see any need for any kind of community audit team. I have no idea what that could bring to the process, none. I think we should, my understanding is we're going to have monthly reports. That's the auditors have agreed to that or informed us of that. We'll have monthly reports. Those reports will absolutely be shared with the community when we receive those. I think we as a board have discussed that. That's where the importance, that's where the information comes. And the auditors are going to say, hey, I need to talk to the director of public works or whatever. I need to talk to this person. I need to talk to that person. We have no idea who they're going to need to talk to as they go forward and who are going to be point people. While I recognize your desire to get maybe a little more form to it, I'm not sure we can. And I really don't see any benefit in bringing in too many people as point people for the auditors. They haven't even indicated that that's anything they are interested in. So that's not anything that I would recommend.
Yeah, let me add one thing too. I think it's important because several members of the association have asked. There was a concept that they were just going to focus on food and beverage, and after our initial meeting, they basically dispelled that myth. They said we're going to start at a starting point where it makes sense, and we are in no way limiting our investigation to just that. And when you listen to how they, at a very high level, talked about the process, it was basically they're saying, we don't look at those kinds of limitations. We look at transactions across the enterprise. So for those folks that may be listening in, I think it's important to let them know that Gross Mendelson said it will not be limited to just a food and beverage operation. Okay, so I think it's an important point. So any other discussion on this? I think it's...
Just wanted to make a final comment on this. First of all, my desire, and purely based on my past experience, some of us had international jobs, and we know what takes place when different country operations require certain audits, who is involved, how, etc., depending upon the circumstances. My desire is basically first to make sure that the board keeps distance from this audit, although I would like to see the team, the audit team report directly to the board, the entire board, so the entire board is privy to what is going on, not just 1, 2, or 3 people. So that's my foremost requirement for sake of transparency, and because at the end of the day, the board ultimately is held accountable and responsible. Number 2, I see a benefit, and again, I would certainly be very interested to get GMA's response to some of the things that are illustrated here. I don't believe anybody can argue with what's required from their external resources point of view, because we have already recognized the need that the legal counsel has to be involved, and Lurch, our firm, has appointed a point contact for that. We also understand that our auditors, SCH, will be involved at some point. So what's there is already a given factor. The forensic technology expert is going to be required. That is to be determined who that is going to be. And on the internal side, it's very obvious. The benefit I see in the independent committee members being appointed is we have people in the community that are intimately familiar with what's been going on last year. We have a previous director of finance that was with us for a number of months, who is now chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, who has extensive knowledge. We have another community member that has a legal background, a corporate background on these issues. These 2 or 3 people can bring some very strong independent support, assistance, and objectivity to the process. So I feel that we should share this with the auditors. We absolutely want to listen to their opinion. After all, they are experts. But we also I feel this is an interactive process, and for the sake of membership, it will be good that we do as much as we can to participate in this process. Ultimately, the audit plan is going to tell us how this is going to proceed once it is developed. And the virtual team, once put together, will be known to everybody.
Let's carry on. We're a couple hours in here.
Can I just make
I'll
a
entertain one
really
more
quick,
comment.
this is really quick, in response to what you just said about input from the people that you mentioned. One of the things that the auditors have agreed to, which they said they have never done before, is they will accept information from community members. It's even, I mean, they have a website or address or something.
We wanted to, and I'll follow up with
Okay.
1 second.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that those people that you mentioned that may have significant input will be able to do it if it's anything relevant.
And to that point, and to Slobodan's point, we were going to send out an announcement, but we wanted to have this discussion first. Slobodan wanted to. I said, let's have it at the meeting today, but we'll have an announcement out, because exactly what they said. They're going to allow for community input directly to them. There'll be a letter. We'll have the address and location in case you have anything that you feel is worthwhile. Although they did very much warn that we don't want hearsay, scuttlebutt, and an opinion. We want, if you have a piece of information that's factual and relevant, so on and so forth. So let's just finish up on that note. There'll be an announcement coming out regarding Gross Mendelson, and there'll be status reports coming out on a fairly regular basis once they get going. All right. Next item on the agenda, we're moving into new business. We have, based on the amended agenda, we have removed the first readings of Resolution CO1, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that moves to a first reading for Resolution M09, which in your board packet you will see all of the information that was started by the search committee. It went over to the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, and the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee has blessed that. They've agreed with the proposed changes, and so with those proposed changes, the search committee has now sent it forward and asked us to take a look at it for a first reading. So no actions required at this point. It's just presented as a first reading. Both the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee and the folks on the search committee are available should any questions come up. So I'd ask that you please review it, and we'll be prepared to look at it as a second reading in next month's meeting. I'm sorry, please. Well, at the risk of spending a whole lot of time, there's a marked up version, and is it posted on, Michelle, it's posted on the website, so I refer you to the marked up version with all the changes that were suggested and approved by the bylaws and resolutions and search committees. All right. I guess we can, yeah, sure, why not? Why not?
Well, I know there's quite a few resolutions that this board's looking to change as far as our governing documents. And since we're reviewing and changing some of them, when I read over M09, one of the, something that I think maybe should be brought up for discussion is on page 3, it says materials selected by the committee, including a confidential list of people contacted. I'm wondering if there should be some discussion. Why, I mean, unless the committee would meet in closed session or something to hide this confidential list. Maybe I'm missing something, and maybe another director can inform me, but why a confidential list of the people who they contacted? Now, their goal is to cast a broad net as practical and not form any judgment as who may be the best candidate. So, I mean, for open disclosure and insurance that they're following that goal, why would this list need to be confidential? And maybe they're just targeting one group of people or one group with an agenda, and the membership don't know who they're asking to be on the board and serve the community. So I'm just wondering, what was the purpose of a confidential list? That's my question.
Yeah, and it's a good question. I think what we probably need to do is refer back to the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee and the Search Committee and say, why did you guys put this in here? What was the thinking with regard to that? Because when I look at it, I see it obviously started with the Search Committee, and I believe Jim Trummel on the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee weighed in on it too. So, but yeah, I can't answer the question, so I would offer that it's probably one of the things before the second reading is to go back, reach back out to the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee with a specific question and say, hey, I need a little bit further detail. And I certainly agree with moving forward that way if you want. Yeah, I think it's a good question. Let's send it back. So will you take the lead on reaching back out to the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee with that question and see if we can get an answer for everybody? Okay. Terrific. All right, thanks. Any other? Joe, you're inferring that I didn't read the first reading? You're wrong. You're categorically incorrect. No, you're saying I didn't read the first reading? Thank you. All right, so moving on to the next item of business. Motion to have engagement of the Union Bank. Pat?
Motion is to resolve to establish an operating account and invest in certificates of deposit with Union Bank. Background: Ocean Pines' primary banking relationship for operating accounts and investment in certificates of deposit is currently with Bank of Ocean City. Historically, Ocean Pines has engaged a second bank primarily for investment in certificates of deposit or similar services. At present, we do not have a second bank. The Budget and Finance Committee has recommended we maintain funds, both operating and investment, in a second bank. Discussion. As required by Resolution F01, the Budget and Finance Committee vetted Union Bank. Union Bank is a 5-star rated bank with the Homeowner Association Banking Services Division that has over 25 years experience. Their internet platform was established in 2001. They offer extended deposit insurance beyond the $250,000 FDIC limits and competitive CD rates. The committee recommends we maintain operating and certificate of deposit accounts with Union Bank.
Is there a second? Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, motion to amend the previously adopted beach parking annual fee for non-members. Slovan?
Thanks, Doug. Motion. I move to reduce the non-member seasonal parking rates for the beach club to $510 in order to be more closely aligned with the members' rates. Background: with the assistance of OPA legal counsel, the board decided to review additional information and to consider previous experience with IRS concerning beach parking fees. Purpose and effect: the purpose of this amendment to previous motion is to come up with a more appropriate cost that will not run the risk of association being viewed as establishing highly unreasonable fee to non-members. The intent is to protect the association from potential issue should anyone file a complaint that would be difficult for OPA to defend.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All right, I'll make a comment. So the way this sort of materialized was once we looked at it, we had advice from the other, our attorney that said, you know, the way you calculated that fee in comparison to parking rates in the area was fine, all right? And interestingly enough, I think that as the way it went, he was having a conversation with one of the other partners who is an expert in tax law and said, basically, you're right, you can do that. However, in other cases, they've seen where the delta between a member and an annual pass and a fee associated with it and a non-member, if that delta's too big, it will raise suspicions. So he went back and said, and they had, I guess they, what did he say? He called it a spirited discussion amongst themselves about, you know, back and forth. And so they reconsidered and basically said, you know, maybe it's probably better to go back, take a look at that and say, if there's something that protects the association, obviously from, you know, not having to have everybody pilfer, you know, parking spaces, but at the same time, you really do want to have a level of fee that really doesn't provide something like, you know, a red flag, you know, that would say, gee, for $2,800. Because he said one could argue that the delta would basically make the pass unavailable to the public. I mean, that's the terminology. So we thought it was due diligence to kind of go back and say, all right, where's the right number? And we came up with this number. So that's, anyway, other discussion, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented to change the fee as noted, please say aye.
Aye.
Next item. Motion to amend the OPA advertising policy. Globanon.
Thank you, Doug. Motion to instruct the general manager to amend current advertising policy effective immediately to also prohibit any candidate standing for the election as a director of the Ocean Pines Association from placing ads in the association's publications. Background: two source documents present an ambiguous situation regarding publications of campaign materials. First source document, the ARC guidelines state in part, the Articles of the Incorporation, Section C, last paragraph states in part, quote, and the association shall not participate in or intervene in parentheses, including the publication or distribution of statements, and parentheses, any political campaign on behalf of any candidate for purpose of office, end quote. Source document 2 is the current OPA policy on advertising, which states, quote, advertising considered adversarial, political, or religious, or suggestive in nature is prohibited, end quote. Purpose and effect: to clarify more specifically the matter of advertising in the OPA publications as it relates to the association's board candidates, period. This improved policy will ensure that all candidates are treated fairly and equally.
Is there a second? I'll second, for sake of discussion. Discussion. Two hours in, and we're out of ideas. Is that it?
There's one.
Cheryl? Actually, 3 hours in, we're out of ideas.
3 hours in.
As there is nothing prohibiting advertising, simply a current policy, I don't agree with prohibiting people to place ads in our publications. It's a source of revenue, and it should be allowed. There is no intervention or support of any particular candidate simply because they place an ad in a publication. And therefore, I don't see any rationale for prohibiting it. And it, as I said, however small, it is, well, maybe you raise the price. It is still a source of revenue. Why would we not want to do that? Why would we not want to allow? There are tons of people running for all kinds of offices currently with the primary looming, as well as OPA board candidates. Why would we want to prohibit that information getting out to the membership?
Colette?
I think one of the sources of this is the confusion that happened during last year's election, that the election committee had told some of the candidates that publication by OPA candidates was not permitted. And I think the idea was to get some kind of policy statement out there so that candidates would be informed consistently, rather than having misinformation disadvantage potentially some candidates versus others. So my interest is just having some kind of a statement that makes clear to candidates what's permissible and what's not. I'm okay with candidates advertising in our publications. I don't think that's the issue. I don't view that as political in the way that I view more partisan political types of offices. But I do think we need to have clarification of the policy.
Slobodan?
Thanks, Doug. Just to respond to Director Jacobs' comments, let me say first, number one, I'm in full support of the committee's recommendation as their liaison. I understand where they're coming from. I understand why they are asking that this language be spelled out the way they recommend it. Speaking as a former candidate myself and looking at what they're trying to achieve, my comments are the following. Currently, any candidate running for the board of directors has space in these publications to, free of charge, make a 200-word statement and to answer 3 questions. If that candidate is not able to convey that information free of charge and needs to buy an ad, that's for the community to decide whether that's really necessary or not. 2, these publications are paid for by the membership's dues. And if thousands of members don't agree with certain candidate, yet they're subsidizing the publication in which he advertises or she advertises, I don't know if really the membership would like that. So I would like to have this publication be independent, objective, and not be used for paid ads by candidates because the publication is fully funded by the entire membership. And we're really not talking about a situation where the candidates are not allowed or will not have any print space in these publications. They do, and they have it really for free of charge. We know that. We all have campaigned, and we had that print space in those publications. So I'm fully in support of this motion. It makes a lot of sense, and I'll leave it at that.
Anybody?
Well, the background piece of this, the association, shall not intervene in any political campaign. I don't think that having an ad in our publication is intervening in a political campaign. It doesn't say that Ocean Pine supports that candidate any more than it says Ocean Pine supports this realtor that has an ad on the same page. It's a paid for advertisement. This is not a free service to candidates. If a candidate wants something in our newsletter, they pay for it. So I think that it is a practice that should continue. It's an opportunity for the candidates to get their names, faces, whatever, out to our community.
So let me comment real quick. So Slobodana, you mentioned the committee had made the recommendation. What was one of the main factors that, you know, they felt that was really, really important that we should think about restricting? Was there a specific thing they were looking at, or was it a sort of the cumulative effect of a number of minor things? I want to try to get a better understanding of where their position or why they took that position so we can help decide this.
Yeah, well, first, the first point, obviously, they looked at the existing advertising policy, which clearly states political ads are prohibited. If you do the research, and they have done so, it is really our election process and our candidates are considered really to be political process in nature, running for an office and being elected by the community. So it kind of fits within the definition of the existing policy, which clearly prohibits political ads from our publications. In addition, they also felt, and I agreed with them, is that this being a publication that's being paid by the entire membership should not be used for political ads by the board candidates simply because a lot of membership may not support that particular candidate and will not want their HOA money to be used to subsidize such ads in the community publications. And that's basically where they stand.
Cheryl.
First of all, there wouldn't be any subsidization of it. You set a price for the ad that addresses what the cost is to the association to include that ad. So that's a zero situation. It's not going to be subsidized by the membership. The ad cost is going to address whatever it costs to put it in the publication. You keep talking about OPA candidates. There are a number of other candidates running for all kinds of other offices. Do we want to preclude them from paying to advertise these are people who are running for positions, excuse me, that benefit the entire community. And so that would be another revenue source for Ocean Pines to allow those kinds of ads to be placed in the publication as well. So you've been talking about only OPA candidates who get free advertising, but there are other candidates for other positions that may very well want to pay to put their ad in the Ocean Pines publication. And as long as you set the price for that ad to cover the cost of it, then nobody's subsidizing it. I just don't understand why you would want to prohibit that.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? One abstain? Okay. Next item on the agenda, discussion of the White Horse boat ramp. Yeah, I wanted to bring this up in front of everybody because we had a discussion during the Budget and Finance Committee meetings when we were preparing the budget, and we talked about the White Horse boat ramp. And there's been, some groundswell of discussion about, it's an amenity, outside people use it, we subsidize it. And so I just wanted to bring it up. As a matter of fact, I recall, and I think, Tom, it was you that mentioned, let's start thinking about maybe a pilot program, something that we should at least socialize with everybody to say, could we make something like this work? Number one, it identifies what I think is a reasonable request from the membership to say, by the way, why are we subsidizing that boat ramp and allowing non-OPA residents to use it? Now, again, maybe it falls back under our amenities have to be open to the public, so there may be a legal issue there. But at the same time, maybe we at least ought to look into it. So the only reason I wanted to bring it up was that I think the Marine Advisory Committee had some ideas on it. I don't know if I got that right, but I just think it's something that we don't want to just kind of let it die on the vine. I think since we brought it up, it's probably worthwhile to get some more opinions on it to see if there's something we can turn from sort of the concept stage into the sort of the tangible stage. So, I just wanted to sort of float that out there and get some reaction. Tom?
Well, you know, it's something that's come up for years now, and to try to identify if there is in fact a problem, there are some boaters, again, that we'll talk about, that want to go on the weekends and bring their boats over there, and they feel like people from out of state are taking the spots and they leave. I'm not sure there's a problem. Years ago, there was some type of an informal study from the boat club and people involved in boating and Power Squadron, and they seemed to feel like that there was not such was not that problematic. There's a resolution that says it's, in our guidelines and our governing documents, that said it's a fee-based amenity. And that's something that would have to be addressed depending on where we decide to go. The committee themselves felt like signage should be changed and be more authoritative, exactly what is allowed and what's not allowed. They volunteered, again, to do a study as volunteer basis and try to get boating members of the community to go there on the weekends and try to take an informal survey. But, you know, I mean, maybe the board wants to do something a little bit more with a pilot program and see if something can be more definitive through a sticker program or a placard in the window that actually identifies an association member who's parking there, so that can be addressed, whether it's through police going through periodically a couple times during the tour of the day and just taking notice to give it some type of a survey or to bring information to the board. That's something that could be addressed as well.
So is it, you think it's worthwhile to at least maybe ask the general manager to say, I wonder, if, you know, maybe something like, I don't know, a placard or something you hang on your windshield, and just maybe to get information, you know? Not to really take any action, but just get information, say, oh, by the way, because Tom, I think you brought up another good point, is that, is there a real problem or is there a perceived problem? Okay? And so, since we really don't have to do anything specific, if we just took action to maybe help ourselves get some data, you know, that might help us make a decision in the future. I don't know. What's everybody think?
I think that's where we are. I don't think we know if it's an issue or not. I mean, when I've been over there, it's never been so crowded that you can't, not that we use it, but it's never been, you know, just being in that area, it's never been so crowded that if you wanted to put your boat in, you couldn't get a parking spot. And it also goes back to cost benefit. Can we even do this?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
we need to. But first we need to know, is there a reason to do it? Is everybody that's using it
Right,
not
right,
a member?
And I think we have one other thing, Tom, you reminded me of something too, and that is it's listed as a fee-based amenity. So if we get this data, maybe we change that so it's not a fee-based, I don't know, but that might be, Colette.
As a user, I have had times when I've wanted to put my boat in and there have not been parking spaces. So in the busier parts of the summer, you know, and I think for people who are weekenders, that's probably more of an issue because the weekend is the busier time that it's being used. I have had times when I've tried to get my boat out of the water and commercial crappers have taken up the space at the ramps and I've had to wait for them. So I think, you know, it's worth getting some information. Well, how we do that, I think a sticker program or placard program would involve some cost. So whether or not the board would want to approve or, you know, recommend that the general manager apply some cost to that type of a data gathering system. I don't think it would be terribly costly. Stickers, you know, are not that expensive. It would be some labor for the people in the membership office to administer this. But, you know, and it may be that the outcome is that we just need to expand the size of the parking lot. You know, maybe we wouldn't need to make it fee-based. I would like to see, I'm sorry. I would like to see us get some revenue out of this if we could, because there are going to be maintenance issues. There's all the gravel and the dividers between the parking spaces. So my preference is, even as a user, I would just as soon pay a little bit of money toward the maintenance on that, even though it's not a yearly need.
Slobodan.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I agree with what Director Herrick said. First, we have an issue with the fact that this is a fee-based amenity listed in a resolution. So we need to really revisit this and decide whether it should stay as a fee-based or not. Because right now we are not really compliant with our resolution. I do favor the pilot program, data gathering that will help the board really make an informed decision that will be channeled from the membership, from the committees, and the users themselves. I'm really not there yet without data whether I support that this be fee-based or non-fee-based, but I am in favor of charging the public that's not members of the community. How much, we can certainly find out, just looking at what other boat ramps charge in the area for similar service, which is very common practice. And I think we'll find out with the right data whether the problem is boat launching or whether it's actually parking, limited parking. And I think that has become, perhaps an issue for a lot of homeowners because there are other trailers there that seem to be non-resident trailers which are parked for a duration of a day. So I think data is lacking. That will help us decide, and then we do need to decide on a fee or non-fee and how much do we charge the public for usage.
Cheryl?
Just a quick comment. I think we can't be in a position to make a decision until we have some data. So why don't we ask the GM to solicit volunteers of an ad hoc group to start gathering this data. We have people in the community who are willing to help us in these kinds of things, so just put the word out that we're looking for people to volunteer to be part of an ad hoc group that's going to try to gather this data for us and then bring it back to us, and then we're in a better position to make a decision.
Colette?
I agree with that. The survey that was done in the past, as near as I can gather, was not done in any systematic or scientific way. And so if there is going to be a study done, I would like to see it constructed in a way that's going to gather information that's really useful and generalizable. And I'd be willing to volunteer to design a study to do that. I have research experience and, know how to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and my desire to always keep the advisory committees involved, in this. I think the Marine Advisory Committee had already stepped up in the past, and, maybe if everybody's comfortable with it, we just kind of reach out to them and say, hey, guys, we talked about this at the last board meeting. Can you please come up with some suggestions, socialize it amongst yourselves? You're an advisory committee. We've got an issue that we think is warranted for further research, and have them do that, and pass it along to them and say, hey, give us something by, over the next several weeks, and see if we can get some input back from them. Is that a reasonable approach? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'll take that. I'll take the lead on that one and just reach out to those guys. Tom, since you're a liaison, actually, would you? Yeah. Okay. All right. So just reach out to them and just basically share with them what we did today, and we'll see if we can get some momentum going on that. Okay. Thanks, everyone. All right, the last item under new business, discussion on soliciting ideas for the annual meeting agenda. Lebanon.
Forgot. Thanks, Doug. I wanted to put this on just for the board and the membership for two reasons. One, this year, as everybody knows, it's a 50th anniversary for the Ocean Pines Association. And it's a significant milestone, and perhaps we should try to make the annual meeting a little more special than what has occurred in the past. We already know that the 50th anniversary committee is planning a time capsule opening, which is going to be, I think, very exciting. Hopefully everybody's going to show up and look to see what actually is in that time capsule. But the idea is really since the annual meeting is membership, it's members' meeting, it's not the board meeting, and therefore everybody has the opportunity to submit ideas for the agenda. The sooner we solicit those, the better it is for us, because at some point the notice for the annual membership needs to be mailed, I think in early June. So there is a limited amount of time to put this agenda together, number one. Number two, also, last year we had unpleasant experience with the annual meeting with one of the members, rightfully wanted to amend the agenda to submit a motion. His request was denied, and it was wrong that the request was denied. I want to make sure that we don't have that kind of a situation again, and to do so is basically to reach out either via publications or announcements. So the idea, if the other board members agree with this, is I would like to ask the general manager to work with the director of marketing to put out some kind of a e-blast that would, maybe solicit a few ideas that would, be relevant topics for the annual meeting for membership to participate in the development of the agenda.
Any other? I'd add one other thing to that, so I would support that idea. I'd include the Communications Advisory Committee as well.
I think that's the election committee's responsibility to help develop that, so wouldn't they be involved in developing that for the membership?
They're responsible for making sure that the annual meeting notice goes on time,
Right.
but they are not responsible for really soliciting the content for the actual annual meeting topics and the agenda.
Yeah.
So
I think I think it's, if we use just, unless anybody has a problem with it, just, take that to the GM, usually the marketing folks and the Communications Advisory Committee, and let's see if we can solicit some input from them to have the annual meeting agenda put together. As you mentioned, the time capsule one. I had actually already talked to Jenny Cropper-Ryans, who's the head of the comms committee, and she'd mentioned that they were looking at that. And I think Steve Tuttle had some suggestions about how to, make the annual meeting interesting. So. Yeah. Okay. So if that's it, so JB, if you would take that forward to those folks and see if we can get some information and get something going on that. Thanks. All right. Seeing nothing else in new business, we have moved over to appointments, and the appointments have been removed based on the agenda being amended earlier this morning. I will. Next item on the agenda is adjournment to closed session for contractual issues as permitted by the Maryland Homeowners Association Act, Section 11B 111, subsection 4. A meeting of the Board of Directors or other governing body of the Homeowners Association or a committee of the Homeowners Association may be held in closed session only for the following purposes. 1, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel. And number 6, consideration of the terms or conditions of a business transaction in the negotiation stage if the disclosure could adversely affect the economic interests of the Homeowners Association. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of moving to closed session? Pardon? The presentation from the... Yeah, that's why we're going into closed session. We'll make sure we get everything taken care of. Thank you for your input. All those in favor of moving to closed session? Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to move